Thank you. I would take a motion to approve the regular agenda as it's printed.
So moved.
Okay, there's been a motion by Sean. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by Maggie. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Got the consent agenda up next. Is there any questions? Otherwise, I take a motion to approve that.
So moved.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Maggie seconds it. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. City engineers, projects update. Chris, you're up.
All right, I do have a engineer's update in your packet today. If there are any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next item.
Yep.
On the 2025 street utility project, bids were opened on February 21st. 10 bids were received on the project. All 10 bids were below the engineer's estimate. The low bid is in the amount of $4,268,296.04, and that's from Holtmeyer Construction. This is roughly $1 million below the engineer's estimate, so very good bids this year. I do have cost splits included in the memo there. Kind of savings all across the board in the 4 major categories: street, sanitary, sewer, water main, and storm sewer. So anyways, moving through there, I do have a recommendation to award the project to Holtmeyer Construction. Holtmeyer completed the 2023 street project. So that was the one over on Sunrise and Sunset 2 years ago. So performed very well on that project. They have indicated that if awarded, they would likely start work in early to mid-May, possibly a little bit earlier, depending on how their schedule fills up. But with that, I do have recommendation to award the project to Holtmeyer Construction. And with that, there is a resolution in your packet that would also need to be passed.
Chris, could you explain to them, the council, on how you come up with your engineer estimate? I think
Sure.
that's important on how you come up with that number compared
Yeah.
to what the bids are at.
Yeah, this is definitely an exceptional one. So when we developed the cost estimate for this project, we used the 2024 street utility project, take the 3 lowest bids, average them out, and then kind of usually estimate about 5% more for some sort of an inflationary increase. So optimally, the engineer's estimate's about halfway between all the bids. So we certainly don't want to be the lowest one. Being the highest one is not preferred either, because you're financing your project, trying to figure out where your funding's coming from. So on this project, we used last year's bids, and things just kind of came in cheaper than expected. Certainly not the 5% increase, and even beyond that, cheaper unit pricing than we had on last year's project. So.
Well, okay, in this, then, that's it then, right? There's no way they can come back, because I'm just wondering now, are we gonna get tons of change orders from Holtmeyer?
Yeah, so they have 24 hours to pull their bid after completing the bid, which was well past that point now, so 2 weeks ago. So they have that amount of time. If they saw something in their bid that they were not satisfied with, they do have the opportunity to pull it, and that did not occur. I have talked to them afterwards. The number 1 bid and the number 2 bid were very close to each other. It does have a range going towards the top end there, where it does start to approach the engineer's estimate. But as far as, trying to, if there's work that's additional beyond what's in the bid, in the contract, and it's justified, we would review it. But there's nothing that would allow them to certainly
Bring us
to
up
the
to another
project.
million, right?
Right, yeah, and working with Holtmeyer on a few other projects the last few years, they have been low, quite a bit lower than some bidders on these other projects too, and I have not had any issues with that.
They did the project on 3rd Street and Sunrise and Sunset, and man, the grass was green and growing by the end of the season, and that was a hot year. I mean, they were out there watering, and just the care and everything that they gave to the residents. And I mean, they were just excellent, and I'm glad that they got this too, because, are going to get it, or, but it's, they're a very good contractor, so. So with that, does anybody have questions for the city engineer? Otherwise, I'll offer resolution 25-03-03-01. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Sean seconds it. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay,
All right, thanks. And just to follow up, we'll likely have a neighborhood meeting scheduled. I'm guessing the early April, once we have a schedule from the contractor. So we'll let everyone know when that occurs.
thank you.
Which that would be our third neighborhood meeting, correct? Is it fourth? Sorry, fourth neighbor. I know people or council members like to know how many neighborhood meetings we've had already, so that would be the fourth one. So, every resident has been notified. Now it'll be coming up on the fourth time.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
All right, the next item up on the agenda is the public is invited to be heard on matters not on the agenda. Does anybody want to speak to the council tonight? Yeah, come on up. You need to state your name and address.
Tom Proshek, 206 Lindell Avenue North. Just a couple of questions. One, I attended the meeting October 21st last year. Don't expect everyone to remember what was going on, but that was the final assessment on the street project on Lindell and Lexington and others. But at that meeting, I believe the council had mentioned that they were looking into, again, I don't know if it's a policy or procedure or something to do with the sidewalks as far as obviously maintaining them, shoveling them, things of that nature we would do, but the council had thought they may be looking into if there was some damage with the sidewalk, would that be
Who would?
taken through the city? So that was my one little question. The other is, I just want to do a shout out to Mr. Matt Rinda. Prior to that project, I had emailed him a few times and without hesitation, in extremely timely manner, responded and came to visit and answered all my questions and stuff. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. So that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And come on up.
Hello, Brian Paulson, 206 4th Street Southwest. I just want to say I saw that you guys were going to be buying a Toro Workman. Just one comment on that. I actually own two of them myself. So I'm pretty happy to see that we didn't take them up on their $2,500 trade-in because that's way too low. So if we are looking to get rid of one of those, I don't know if the state surplus auction is something that we could do, but that should be definitely like more than $7,000, $10,000. Those are worth a lot more. So I just wanted to say that I appreciated us not kind of getting screwed there by that low trade-in. The only other comment is I was really hoping to by this time we'd have an answer for the backyard chickens. I know that was brought up I think late December or early December maybe, then brought up a couple more times. I know that right now a lot of people are buying the chickens or making the coops and stuff like that for the season. So I was really hoping that we could have seen that on the agenda by this time. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else want to address the council? Seeing none, okay, we'll move on. The next item up is tobacco violation appeal hearing.
Yes, I guess I'll give you a brief overview, and certainly let the chief step in where he needs to correct me or wants to add more detail. Back on January 6th, New Prague Tobacco allegedly violated our city's ordinance 117.05A1 for selling tobacco products to a person of under the age of 21. This is the third violation for New Prague Tobacco within the last 36 months. I sent them an administrative citation on January 24th outlining the violation and the next steps. The next steps for this are either A, they can appeal the citation, or B, they can pay a fine and cease business operations from anywhere from 30 days to 360 days according to our ordinance. Ultimately, speaking through it with the chief, we decided on 30 days. And then there would be reviews immediately afterwards once they got going, and we'd escalate it if we had to. I sent them a letter in your packet outlining that process, and they did reach out and say they wanted to appeal the violation for tonight, actually. We confirmed with them about tonight. They said they would be here, but it does not appear unless one of these gentlemen is recommending New Prague, or representing New Prague Tobacco, and it doesn't sound like there's anyone online, that, nobody is in attendance, so.
One question, is that the same, is that the only, establishment here in the cities that, put in to sell marijuana, THC? No?
No, so this is for tobacco, not necessarily.
Well, I was just wondering if it's the same business. The same guy that own,
No, they're separate owners.
all right, thank you.
Was there a reason that they wanted to appeal? I mean, some grounds for their appeal?
So the initial reason that they gave, our administrative assistant when they stopped in and confirmed they wanted to appeal was that they said they would be selling the business and they weren't gonna be owning it anyway. And so it didn't matter whether we didn't need to give them the suspension for that reason. I guess speaking to Scott Riggs, he certainly recommended to still suspend them because either A, the business may not sell, or B, if the person should buy back in or move somewhere else, then they can serve their suspension at that time within the city,
Okay.
so.
Thank you.
I have a question, because I thought Zins are a nicotine pouch, they're not, there's no tobacco in them whatsoever. If,
It's still the sale of nicotine to a minor, nicotine and tobacco.
so there's a difference between, he doesn't have any standing on the fact that there is no tobacco in there.
One and the same, right? So it's a nicotine derived device, so something like your, I guess your vapes, there's no tobacco in those either, but it's the ingestion of the tobacco or the nicotine products.
Okay.
So is this just, if they don't, nobody's here, does this just take
So-
effect?
So they still did formally request an appeal, and so I guess a decision should be made whether, to, uphold the citation or rescind the citation.
Make the motion to deny, so moved.
To deny the appeal.
Yeah, I'm a parent, bugs me.
To uphold the citation,
Correct.
you make a motion to uphold the citation, is there a second? I'll second it. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed, motion carries. All right, the next items we have up is a resolution authorizing the fund transfer and closure of account CIP 2007 Fund 375.
Yes, we talked about this at the last meeting, and there were certainly a couple questions, kind of around, one, kind of a history of the balance and how it got to where it was, as well as, B, I guess one and B, well, one, two, kind of where that fund balance could potentially be used. So as we dug into this, fund balance more clearly, from what we can tell, the project back in 2007, so this is for the 2007 CIP, came in underbid by a little over $100,000. And then the bond amount never seemed to have actually adjusted after that. And so most of this surplus was actually in the bond payment fund, kind of as they started making payments, and there was a little bit of an increase, it looks like, in there from there, and that's how it kind of got up to from what was about 130,000 up to roughly 160,000. So that the vast majority of that balance has been in there since 2007, I guess, and as it is, I mean, I guess as we look at this is certainly an opportunity that Robin and I are taking to look into these fund balances a little bit more. Usually in the past, this was something that we had paid Springstead and then Baker Tilly to kind of run through these for us and give us advice on how to move. And I mean, as you know, we're no longer with Baker Tilly, we're now working with Ellers, and we have certainly communicated that we'd like to be a little bit more in the know and on these, so these don't get quite as large, and kind of go from there. As to where these funds can go, we've talked to our auditors, and they they are certainly under the impression that these funds can really go towards anything, whether we want to put them back in the general fund, whether we want to put them, as I'm recommending here, in the equipment fund, knowing that we've got a big fire truck coming down the pipe. But I know in the past, speaking with Ken, who has been here the longest and has kind of worked closest with some of these as they've come through, he said for as long as he remembers, the council has always kind of used these overages like this to go towards kind of one-off projects, whether it's equipment or other various projects. I know they used to go into the 499 fund and get used in that way. So,
And the 499 fund was like a
it was kind of, yeah, it was kind of like a
discretionary fund.
capital projects fund, you could call it, yeah.
Well, I still find it amazing that we didn't see that when we, cause we refinanced a lot of those loans when the interest rates were so, deflated.
Yeah, it was around 2000, was that 2020?
11.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, then and then again in 20, so, it just seems odd that we didn't catch that.
Or even the auditors.
Well, or Baker Tilly, who was actually
Yeah.
advising us to go with the lower interest rate.
So I know in some of those, I mean, you certainly want to be high because you don't want to have to transfer a negative balance back, but you are right that is probably higher than what I would normally like to have seen that. And so, like I said, this is an opportunity that Rob and I are going to take to help kind of review all of our accounts with Ellers going forward so that they know where we're at and we can hopefully catch these a little bit farther out.
Closer in, you mean? Further
Well,
out.
when I say farther out, I mean farther away from the closing of it. And so
I got
if we know that something is going to be high 6 years out, we can start adjusting levy amounts down so that way they don't close out with as high balances.
I see what you mean, okay.
So, yes, along those lines, because this was tabled, resolution is still the same resolution from the last meeting, which is 2502-1802, authorizing the fund transfer of this into the equipment fund, Fund 498, and then closing CIP 2007. I think, Sean, you had the question last time as to, well, we can still move the money. Yes, and so even if the money were to go into the equipment fund, if something were to happen this year or next year and we're like, you know what, we'd kind of like to pull some of that money back out to put here, that is certainly something we can do.
Okay. So with that, any questions of the council? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for that resolution.
I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2502-1802, authorizing the transfer and closure of CIP 2007, Account Fund 375.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
And Sean seconds it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next item is the lease of the 40 acres of athletic complex property.
Yes, on that property out there, we've been doing 3-year leases for a number of years now. And Mr. Dan Sullivan, who is currently leasing the property, to reach out to Ken and I here about a month ago, saying that he was certainly interested in leasing again. The current rate through 25 here that he's leasing for is at $235 an acre. And I suppose I can, $235 an acre for 39 total acres, and has been leasing it since 2009. Looking at the kind of the going rates for both LeSueur and Scott County, we determined that a lease rate of $240 per acre for the next 3 years is a pretty fair rate. I know looking at USDA cropland information, has LeSueur County right now renting at about $250 and Scott County at about $201 for 2004. And so that's kind of how we landed on the high side, closer to $240 for this particular land. As background information, because the city does collect a rent on this, we do have to pay property taxes on it. Property taxes for 2024 were $2,470. So about a fourth of what we end up collecting total in rent. And to this point, renting or leasing to Lanesburg Farms, we've certainly had very favorable experiences. And while not in the contract, they've even allowed the city to dump excess snow out there if needed. And certainly our snowier months. I don't know if Matt's ever actually had to take advantage of dumping snow out there or not, but twice?
But it's been 15 years, I think.
Oh, has it? Okay, so they've certainly been a very good, lessee for us. And so I guess at this point, I would recommend approving, resolution 030302 to, extend that out for 26 through 28 at a rate of, $240 per acre.
So moved.
Rick made a motion to approve the resolution. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Sean seconds it. Any other discussion or questions? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Okay, general business, Rusty Spoke 2526 license renewal.
Yes, so we, earlier in the meeting, during the consent agenda, we did renew liquor licenses for all but one of the businesses across the city. The one that we did not, was not included in there, was the Rusty Spoke. The Rusty Spoke, we've been working with for, going back to 2023 now, trying to get the property cleaned up. And this is certainly one where Tim can step in for me again, as he's got a little bit better history than I do on some of these details. But back in 2023, the city did issue, Don't Be Lion, who's the LLC overseeing that, a citation for refuse and inoperable vehicles. Is that correct? Or no, or did we issue the, you know what? I'm gonna let Tim take the details on this as the one writing tickets.
Go ahead, you're doing fine. No, it was back a year ago when we worked with the county attorney's office, and in talking with them, we issued a citation. It was then dismissed by them. We reissued a citation to the business owner, and that is currently going through the court process right now. So I believe there's a court hearing again next month, I believe, on that for another hearing. So in talking with Scott Riggs, this could be a reason to deny the permit until the property is conforms with city ordinance in the back, specifically with the vehicles and some of the property that's back there. So we've been working, the owners are aware of this. We've sent letters, we've talked to them, so they are aware of this. And my last conversation was that some tenants were gonna be moving out and some of those vehicles were gonna be gone. I did see a U-Haul trailer down there at one point a couple weeks ago, and a couple of things have moved, but I don't think that it is anywhere near where it needs to be right now. And in talking with Ken, we're of the same belief that that needs to be resolved before we move forward.
Well, did they build a blind back there or something?
Well, it's
Yeah.
kind of like a tent is what it is. It's kind of like
So
the
you
ones
could
you
work
buy at
on an
Menards,
engine.
like it's a carport is what they call them, I think would be the proper term. But, and then I think there was some vehicle maintenance that was going on there in the colder weather. And I think that there was a little heater in there at one point, so when it was cold, they could work in there and have a little heat. But again, not something that doesn't conform with the ordinance, right? They can't do that, so that citation is working its way through the court system right now, and I obviously don't have a disposition or resolution from the court on that. We'll wait and see where that comes from, but I think minimally we're still able to have the conversation about this property needs to be in compliance with the ordinance for a nuisance before we issue a permit.
Can't we, table it?
Yep, so I was gonna say, along those lines, my recommendation, is, cause we did send them a letter stating that they would need to clean it up by March 14th, or, staff would be recommending denial. I brought it forward tonight, cause I wanted to make sure that they did submit on time. They submitted all the application paperwork correctly, so I wanted to make sure that it was in front of you. But I would, I guess at this point, recommend tabling it until the next meeting, which gives them another 2 weeks here, to get that property cleaned up. And then we can consider their liquor license at that point.
Do we need to do you just need a
Table.
round table?
But yeah, so
vote?
I
I think, cause we're all on, I think we're all on the same
Yep.
side of,
Yeah, I would just move to table
just
then
another
and
feather
vote on
or
it, yeah.
another.
Okay, so who wants to offer a motion to
So
table
moved.
this? Is there a second?
I'll second.
Maggie seconds it. Any other discussion?
Make it clear, we're tabling. Give
Till
me
the
a number
next
again.
meeting.
Till the next meeting,
Correct.
the 17th, right?
Correct.
Okay,
And that we're serious. We want to clean it up.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Really,
So
we
just-
really do.
Just a vote then.
Yep.
You know, guys, they were out there welding
I saw that
4 o'clock at night, I mean.
I was walking in the afternoon and they were out there
Yep.
welding.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Termination of lease agreement at 411 Fifth Avenue Northwest.
Yes, so, there's currently a building on the fire station property, that has been leased, for the last about 8 years out to Tom Masberg. And, the last lease agreement ran out in 2022. And part of the clause for that basically said that assuming that the lessor still has, or the lessee still has the property and the lessor allows them out there, it'll continue on a month-to-month basis with a 90-day termination period. And I did attach that lease in the agreement for you, knowing that it would take about 90 days to terminate as we are talking through a potential police station process going out there. I guess I would recommend the city council allow me to contact Mr. Masberg to officially notify him that we're exercising our right to terminate. Doing so at this point would allow the city to remove the building no later, I would say, than June 1st, though I'd certainly talk to Mr. Masberg and see if he wanted to take the whole 90 days or if otherwise. And so I have certainly been in conversations with him kind of over the last 2 or 3 years that the city's been having that conversation. He's called, we talk a couple times a year just kind of where things are at and if he's okay out there. So I guess that would be my recommendation, so that way we can kind of keep things moving. If for some reason the police station doesn't keep going, I know he's certainly happy out there using the space and he may pick it up again.
Okay. Any questions on that? Otherwise, I'd take a motion to terminate the lease agreement at 411 Fifth Avenue Northwest.
So moved.
Sean made a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Maggie seconds it. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, the next item is the personnel handbook update.
Voice is getting tired. Usually I've got Ken to step in by this point. So as we continue to look for ways to, I would say, attract and retain talent, compensatory time is certainly something that has come up more recently as we've had discussions internally amongst department head staff. I know over the last year or so, especially, Public Works has been hit harder than probably the rest of them in terms of staff leaving. And a lot of them are leaving for surrounding cities around us that are paying anywhere from $2 to $7 and $8 an hour higher than what we're currently paying. And so as we explored ways of potentially finding benefits, I know that many of our staff, not only in Public Works, but kind of across the city, they tend to be slightly younger staff and have been asking more about compensatory time and that sort of thing, many of them having young children and, well, kids tend to get sick and they start running out of sick time and that sort of thing. And so we kind of explored the compensatory time a little bit. I know our uniformed police officers do currently have that worked into their contract of comp time. So I guess at this point, as we thought about it, this certainly doesn't change how overtime would be dealt with in the city. Overtime, or in this case, move to compensatory time, would need to be approved by a supervisor before it could be gained. And some departments would certainly gain more than others. I would guess that overtime will be accrued no more than it's currently being accrued. It would just allow for some people to say, hey, I'll take mine as comp time instead of getting paid out, which in some ways actually would benefit the city, paying out as comp time, because then we aren't paying that extra dollars over the top. So I guess at this point, under the policy as is written in here, employees may earn up to 40 hours total in a calendar year. So if you earn your 40 and then spend it down, you've earned your 40 for the year. There's no chance to build that back up until the next calendar year.
Okay.
So I guess I would recommend approving this compensatory time and making it standard language within the personnel policy handbook.
And it's not gonna be forced, like you have to take comp time, cause that was the old days.
It would not. So if you, Mr. Mayor, worked for us and
When I talk about old days, I'm talking about when I worked here, so I wanna.
no, so yeah, you'd get your choice. It'd come like if you work 42 hours in a week, you could choose to pay out that 2 hours either as overtime, which is what we would do now, or you can say, hey, I'd rather have 3.5 hours of time off because I know that my kids are getting sick all the time and my wife's running out of sick time and I'm running out of sick time, that sort of thing.
Okay. All right.
I don't mind, it's up to them, I mean, it's funny, cause about 10 years ago, they fought for, they didn't want comp time. They wanted
kidding.
Yeah,
or
no-
forced comp time, they wanted the money, but, that's fine, I guess my only concern is that we still watch our overtime, just because we're giving that, I mean, that we're not,
Yeah, and, yeah, so, and
it's
I,
easy to see the money, you know, in here and that we're over, but no, this is something that is just as valuable, there's nowhere on the ledger to see it, so. I don't
Correct,
wanna
yeah,
have to
so-
pay people just to cover vacations, so.
yeah, no, I fully agree.
For
and
extra
there's-
staff.
That's something that staff and I have certainly talked about, 'cause I mean, there's some departments that accrue no overtime, it's just we don't need those employees to accrue overtime, and other departments, that stuff comes up and sometimes they accrue more than others, and so, yeah, overtime will continue to be watched, cause an employee could certainly choose to take the overtime and then we're paying it, so.
Well, some of that stuff we're happy to do. I mean, for the snowplow guys, they haven't earned any overtime at all this year.
Yeah, and comp time is still kept on the books.
Correct.
So
Yes.
it's still an
Thank 'em.
expense.
Okay, and if there aren't any other questions, I'll offer this,
Second,
motion to approve this, handbook change update. There was a second by Rick. Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Now, the next item is the regional training facility discussion that we talked about.
Yeah, so I'd kind of handed out those materials here at the last meeting, just kind of, so you kind of read through them if you'd like. Those studies were done by Leo A. Daly, sanctioned by Scale, to look at the RTF and really the facility as a whole, as to, and what conditions it was in, very similar to our facility study, and then kind of what the future would look like depending on what potential members may want to do. So the part we are in this process, as kind of agreed to by the entirety of the Scale Board, was that we need to kind of figure out what organizations want to continue to be a part of Scale, and which ones don't. And for those that do want to continue to be a part of Scale, is there certainly a dollar figure of, you know, we pay this, we certainly don't want to pay more than this because it no longer becomes palatable for us for whatever reason. I know there's some communities that have already expressed internally that they feel their council is likely leaning towards out. There's others saying that their council is all in to make this facility work. Currently, the city of New Prague pays $8,353 annually. And according to Leo A. Daly, assuming nothing happens out at the RTF facility and all members continue to participate, that number would likely rise to an estimated almost $12,000 by 2030 as reserves are exhausted, and the loss of Carver County fully kind of spreads itself out into the system for what's needed to maintain the facility year over year.
Repeat that. So our cost would go up to about?
Our cost would go up to about $12,000 a year if nothing else changes by about 2030 is what they're
2030.
estimating.
Okay.
but there could be cities right now that opt out of,
But if there
and
are
then
cities,
we'd go up.
yes, so obviously, yeah, if there's any cities that opt out, we could go up. If there's organizations that come in, because there's also that active work going on right now, seeing if other organizations in the area maybe want to become a member, and contribute to the facility. So,
I guess we gotta hear from the chiefs. I mean, Steve's here and
Well,
and that, Rick, is why they are here tonight. We are here tonight to kind of, I figure over this meeting and the next meeting, we can certainly have these discussions, and my hope would be that by April, we kind of come to, if not a unanimous decision, at least a majority decision as to this is kind of where we'd like to move forward with. So that way, at our meeting mid-April, that I can represent the wishes of New Prague kind of as how we look at the future of the RTF. So,
just for clarification, you mentioned that we're either in scale or out of scale, but scale is just an organization separate from the RTF.
Correct, so,
Oh,
yeah,
all
okay,
right,
yeah,
so
okay,
it-
so maybe I misspoke then.
okay.
Yeah, so we are, by being within Scott County, we are a member of Scale and
Right,
participate in
okay,
Scale.
okay.
The RTF is a separate participation,
Run under the umbrella.
kind of under the umbrella of Scale, but we
Okay.
are, yeah, we pay membership dues into it to help maintain the facility and
Okay.
that sort of thing.
Thank you.
So I did kind of lay out some questions in the packet we can certainly run through to kind of just help spur conversation. And we can certainly, if you guys have other questions, we can go from there. I was trying to come up with questions just to kind of have Tim and Steve kind of help us through these and see exactly how they're using the facility, whether we're able to meet any of our own needs, kind of what that may look like if we were to try to meet those needs ourselves, what it would look like if we tried to use other facilities other than the RTF to meet some of those needs, and then kind of what they or myself maybe view as non-monetary benefits of being a member of the RTF. So I guess looking at Tim first, because you got the mic, I guess, how do you guys use the facility as an organization, and are there any parts, because this is a large facility, that we don't see ourselves using?
Yeah, I think, and I don't recall exactly when we transferred to using scale. It was shortly after I started here. I want to say it was 2008, 2009. If you recall, long ago, the police department used to shoot up where the compost site is now. So we've come a long, a long way from there, right? So, the range they put in is great. It fits our needs for the shooting. There's a 200-yard range and a 25-yard range. We don't use the 200-yard range as much. It is a second option if 25-yard range is booked and we need to send somebody up to qualify or whatever that looks like. There was a driving simulator in the scale facility at one time that has kind of dated itself. That's no longer utilized anymore. That was taken out of service. And they had the scenario room, which was good. And again, I think that kind of dated itself as well. I think
Is that the Milo you're
yeah,
talking?
the Milo system. Yeah, where you
Wanna
could do
explain that a
The
little bit?
beeping, is that was the one on my helmet that used to beep? That's the Miles system.
Milo, yeah.
Milo, it's called.
Okay, and then it's got a thing on the end of the long gun?
Milo, yeah, you could set up different scenarios, and there was a screen, and then there was someone that ran the scenarios, and you could kind of change as you went through, kind of shoot, don't shoot scenarios. You could use a taser or different kind of scenarios in there.
Right.
So that was really good. But again, that kind of dated itself, and there were only a certain amount of scenarios that you could go through. So after about 3 or 4 years up there, you've been through every scenario. So it was, I remember this one, right? So, and then I think that software kind of sunsetted, and there wasn't anything additionally to update. So that part of the facility we don't use anymore. So for us right now, our primary use is the range and the use of force room. It's a padded room that we do our mandatory use of force yearly and in the range. We do use some of the classroom for part of that use of force when we go through, because there's a paper component as well, but we have transferred to reviewing that prior to going up there, so we limit our time up there. The officers will go through the scenario stuff and the paperwork stuff prior to that. I like that it is close. It's 10 miles away, 12 miles away. We are able to schedule. We have the members have a first come, first serve, so we're able to book things relatively easy for us. So if something comes up, if we have someone that's sick or another training day or we're short-staffed for whatever reason, we're able to reschedule our shoots and get our mandatory stuff in as well as our training shoots. So from that perspective, that's a huge benefit for us. I think as you look towards the future, I think in law enforcement, what's coming is virtual reality, right? The goggles and creating scenarios that you don't need a huge space for. You don't need to have actors and recreate the whole scenario. I mean, the actors and those types of things are kind of phasing out, if you will. But again, there's some benefit to that as well in having the scenario rooms, because there's nothing like walking through and feeling and breathing and doing those things while you're moving as well, instead of just stationary. So I think it's going to be a twofold. There's going to be that, but there's going to be some more virtual reality as well. So part of what the scale is proposing is having some scenario rooms, which can be very good because you can use what's called simunition rounds, almost like a water ball or a paintball, very similar. But then you hear the shot and you feel the shot. Obviously, it's leaves a little mark on your skin or whatever. It's not a huge pain, and there is some benefit to that, knowing that you could, right? If you do it in like playing a video game, if you get shot, the screen just turns red and you're done. There is some anticipation and some very good training that comes from doing scenario-based training. So we would probably never go away from not ever doing that. What that looks like for us could be different, right? We have to, if we're going to use simunition rounds, we have to find a place to do that, right? We're probably not going to do that in a school or somewhere where the
they're messy.
rounds can, a building. If we can find some abandoned rooms or buildings, that's great, but I don't know that we have a space that I could dedicate and say, we're going to use this building for this, to do that tomorrow. Sure, outside stuff, we could do that, but some of the vehicle things, we're able to drive our squad car onto the range right now and do some vehicle things, using your vehicle for cover, high-risk traffic stops, things that potentially could happen in real life, right? If you look at police-involved shootings and high-risk things, it doesn't happen when you're just standing across from somebody talking to them. 90% or higher don't happen that way, or 99% I think is even higher. So it's creating some of those scenarios where you're gonna have to get out of your car, you're gonna have to retreat, you're gonna have to turn the lights on, it's gonna have to be dark, right? There's gonna be a siren going, there's gonna be people yelling, there's gonna be fire alarms going off. Things like that I think is super beneficial for us to go through those, to create something as close to real life as we can recreate in a training scenario. So getting to that, and I think that would be beneficial at the scale facility. Now, finding that and being a member as opposed to renting that facility for 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours, is that a cost breakdown that we could incorporate and make sense? I don't know that answer yet, because we don't know the pricing and who's in and who's out. I do think that there's value in the scale facility. I think there's value in us having a say in what goes into it and what's available. Whereas if we rent, I don't know that we have a voice there anymore, right? We're just kind of there to rent what's available. I know with the proposed new police building that we have created some space that we could use for our defensive tactics and things like that. So yes, that could be done there. But that's just one aspect of it, right? So there may be a use of force incident where you incorporate firearms and use of force, because a lot of times we'll do that in the same day. We'll go out and do the use of force and then the firearms, and kind of incorporate and mix those two together a little bit, because they are kind of one and the same. I talked with Lakeville. They're in the process of building what's called the First Center. I think I talked a little bit about this last meeting. Their training facility.
Is that Hero Center?
Yeah, it's called the First Center. The Hero Center is different. So
Okay.
it's the city of Lakeville is gonna own that building. And then they're gonna have some members, and I talked with the chief of Lakeville, and they don't know exactly how it's gonna work yet, if they're gonna have contributing members or renting members that have a higher priority for scheduling and reserving things. There is a lot of interest in that right now. He's talked with several agencies around the area in Northfield, Dundas, Faribault, regionally, there's a lot of interest in that. So as soon as there's a lot of interest, all of a sudden demand goes up and time goes down. So I don't know what that looks like, or from a cost base. They're thinking right now that it would be to rent or become a part of this in some capacity. And again, we don't know what that looks like, but it would to average about $1,000 per officer is kind of what the going rate is. And they said that they would be competitive with surrounding centers, like the ones that are on your sheet here, the Hero Center and the South Metro and Olmsted County and those, which if you look at $1,000 an officer, it's fairly close to where they're at.
So yes, what he's referencing is the sheet that I put in front of you guys that kind of outlines the various, rates. So the RTF did do this research here, about a year ago to kind of just see what surrounding, stuff, would cost, as well as what, current usage was for 2024 for the RTF numbers. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
No, you're good. And I believe if we, I don't remember what sheet it was on, but if we were to, that was this one, our costs for the year, had we not been a member, would have been $11,631. Right? So when we start looking at around $1,000 an hour, that starts to make a little more sense to me, right? If I'm looking at our staff of 12 sworn officers, that's very close there. So as it goes up a little bit with scale, I think our ability to be a part of that and kind of help this grow and develop, I think that we're gonna be in a similar scenario as Lakeville, where there's gonna be regionally, and I say probably from the south, because there isn't a lot down there right now for them to use and utilize. I think that there's gonna be some draw with a facility that's modernized and they can bring up a group of people and use it for a day, or whatever that looks like, right? They can use a classroom, a scenario room, the range, and then the mat room. They can get a lot of their boxes checked that they're needed to do for their post requirements in a day or two, or whatever that looks like for them. But
Yeah, I saw in here where Lesueur started using it
yeah,
someplace. I can't
yep, they
find it,
did.
but-
They used it for the range, I think. So I guess my biggest priority right now would be our range. And again, we don't know. I know that there's construction is in process for a range here in New Prague as well, right? And we don't have costs for that either. So we don't know what that looks like, but I don't know that we're gonna be able to drive a police car into that, and set up barricades and do things that would be more scenario based in that building. Yes, we can shoot and we can put rounds down range, draw on fire and do our qualifications and things, but to create the scenarios, to continue to push and really get the training to make our officers the best that they are, I think we need to do that scenario-based training and do some of that. So again, I don't have a facility for that right now, and I don't know what the cost ratio is to renting, jumping on board, and how that would work, but.
So this total, it's, you guys have 4,110 shots fired?
Yes, is that the one in here it was?
Yep.
Yeah. And one of the interesting, as I was looking at this data sheet, is you can see our numbers kind of track up, right? If you even going back to 2021, we were at 830, and last year we were at 4,110, right? So that's us wanting to be better, right? And identifying training, and that's what the officers want, and they want to feel comfortable, and we transition to some new handguns this year, so there'll be probably a little more range time this year, getting used to those and qualifying and getting those done. But, we're at the lower end, I would say, of even some other agencies that are of similar size to us. So we would like to continue to use and shoot more and do those trainings, so.
So if you didn't have a regional training facility, it would be kind of fragmented, where, let's say, example, you use the indoor shooting range that is proposed here. You could rent other time at the RTF for driving your vehicle in, so would that be an inconvenience to try to, for lack of a better word, piecemeal it together, rather than having just one facility?
I think it would. I think with the scheduling and the software that they have now at the scale, they have a scheduling software where you can go in and just schedule it, and we can schedule, like, right now we have all our firearms is scheduled for the entire year, because we can go in there and we have the priorities, so we can go in there, reserve our times and our spaces, and then it can get open to the other outside, the public, or some colleges and skills people use it and do those things. I wish I knew the answer to that question. I think until you live it, you don't know, but I do see some scheduling hiccups with some of the other ranges in the area because they're utilized by bigger agencies, especially when you get up in Edina and Lakeville. Like, you're gonna start pulling the Rosemounts and the Lakeville and the bigger agencies that have 3 or 4 times as many officers as we do. They're gonna need 3 or 4 that much more time, right? So I don't know what that looks like. I think the convenience is a huge benefit for us to be able to utilize that and be a part of a group and be a consortium within Scott County, because we do so many things with the same officers. We've oftentimes trained together because deputies are coming down here to help us, and we're going to Jordan. Jordan's coming here in Belle Plaine, and so I think there's a benefit to that. Not that we couldn't arrange those trainings, but again, if we're not a member, I don't know, that's another rental fee for us too, but.
That last part makes a lot of sense of being able to train with other agencies. Get a sense of
Yeah.
cooperation,
Yeah,
coordination.
and that's primarily who we see, right? That's the people that we work with and day in and day out, and we hear on the radio, and if something goes bad, they're here to help us, and we're here to help them, so.
Have you had any discussions with the owner of the proposed indoor gun range here?
It's been a little while since I've had that discussion with him, and he didn't have a number for hours or rates yet, so I can continue to do that and as they get closer. And I think, again, with the First Center in Lakeville, one and the same, right? They're just trying to dipping their toe in the water here to see how this is gonna look. But again, the city of Lakeville is going to own that building, and then they're gonna decide how it's utilized, so.
Because what we do, we're gonna have to, like, Steve, how often do you use that tower?
Yes, so I guess, yeah, Steve, you'd wanna talk to how you guys use the facility, or if there's fire parts we don't use, and.
Sure. So I think last year we used it 2 or 3 times. Our new guys get their classes there. They are taught through a college, so the college rents the facility and then charges us. So we don't get the member benefit for our new guys because the college is still charging us for our members. We pay the bill, and then the state fire training fund reimburses all new firefighters as long as they get certified. So essentially what I'm trying to say is being a member doesn't save us for the new guys. We still pay, but we get reimbursed by the state. We use it 2 to 3 times a year. The struggle we have with it is I can only send about 12 to 15 people at a time there because I still need to have people in town to cover. So we end up setting up 2 different trainings on those nights. The other struggle for me with being a member is we pay rent, which I can't get reimbursed. If I rent it, I can take the $1,350 rent and I can
turn that into the state and get reimbursed for the $1,350. As a member, we just pay our dues. That's non-reimbursable through the MBFT, which is the Minnesota Board of Firefighter Training. We get approximately $7,000 to $10,000 a year in reimbursable expenses for training. Sometimes we use it all, sometimes we don't use it all. So the struggle for me is the way the building is currently constructed fits New Prague Fire's needs. We use the tower. We have not used the Class A burners. And we have not used the simulator or the classrooms for our Tuesday night training. So we're just using the tower doing scenario-based training. So for me, using just the tower, me personally as the fire department, I would be better off renting it because I could get reimbursed for my invoice.
I guess along those lines, Steve, is there any way, I mean, Tim kind of spoke to potentially being able to use other facilities outside of the RTF.
Right. So for us, if, let's say, we weren't a member and we weren't able to rent it, we would be renting trailers. So Riverland, Hennepin, there's a couple other ones around. They have like SCBA trailers, little burn trailers and stuff. They bring them right to the fire station. We use them a couple times a year. I think the trailer's $1,500 a night. We do our training in it. They send the bill. I submit the bill, we pay the bill, and then we get reimbursed by the state for that bill. So that would be the alternative. The other alternative is currently their Class A burners out there are just Connex boxes. They have 3 Connex boxes that are just connected together, and they just burn pallets in there. I did talk to Josh and Matt a little bit. You know, would there be a situation where we could set up 3 Connex boxes out at the city dump way in the back, put a fence around it, and then I could bring everybody there because we're in town and we could do our training right there with our burns. So just something that we explored. So that would be an option for an alternative training if we were not to use the training center.
How much do you pay, or how much are the fire dues out there, or is that part of the?
I want to say it's 50-50, right? So if we pay $8,500, I think
Yeah,
it's.
I mean, it's, I guess, I don't have an exact breakdown.
Yeah,
But
I-
I think we split it into departments, we just split it in half, but I think we just have a general membership to the RTF of $8,300.
Oh, that's a general membership, okay, I thought that, 83 was the police, 83 was you.
It sounds like you both are saying rent is better. Renting it is better.
It's better for me. I don't know if it's better for Tim, because Tim probably doesn't get his training reimbursed by the state. So I think from what I understood from what Tim said, and I don't want to speak for Tim, but he's not sure what it's gonna cost to rent a new facility compared to what the dues are now, or what the dues are proposed to be. And I guess I just saw some of the same packet you did with some of the renderings and some of the things they want to do there. Those don't really affect me a lot. We're just using the tower. We would continue to use the tower to do some of our scenario-based stuff and our standpipe stuff. But for me, if we could have something, if we could rent it, it would be better for the fire, just because we can get reimbursed that way. And then there's a savings there. And then if we could set up something in town where I could get everybody at the same time is definitely better and easier.
So I think along those lines, Rick, there are certainly, I think being a member does have its benefits out there. One of the things that the board did pass about a year ago was the, I guess, benefit of having to cancel. So if Tim were to book a space out there for, let's say, Monday here next week, and God forbid some event happens on Monday that we are now stuck here and every officer is on call and we're not sending anyone to training, that's fine. Like, hands off. For non-members, there is I believe it's a 60-day cancellation, where if you cancel within 60 days, you do still have to pay full. And that came, and obviously there's still discretion there for some events that may happen for those non-members, but they were seeing a lot of people that would book a whole day and then just not show up and say, oh, forgot it was on the calendar type of thing. Well, now you lose a whole day of revenue for the facility. So there are certainly stuff like that, or like Tim mentioned, and I'm sure Steve has it too, you get priority scheduling out there. Members can schedule way out in advance, and I believe non-members it's only 6 months in advance that they can schedule stuff out there. So, there are certainly benefits to being a member besides just being a renter. The question is, do those benefits actually weigh strong enough for us to do that?
So what's the next process here? Are they gonna go out and get bids?
So I think, yeah, so the total process for this is, we all come back on April 11th is the next meeting, and let's say 3 cities decide that they don't wanna participate anymore, and everybody else decides they want in.
Okay,
Now they know who's in, and they'll work with those cities to say, okay, like, what are you guys looking to get out of the RTF at this point? Or, maybe New Prague's in, all we wanna make sure, to Steve's point, a lot of the upgrades aren't doing a lot for us. What we really like is the outdoor range where we can use cars for our officers and the long range. That's kind of our big thing, and they may go, well, everybody else wants X, Y, Z in there as well, and then at that point, it may be on the city of New Prague to say, you know what? While we certainly want in, we don't want in at this cost. And so, I think the process would be whether we're in or not, and then if we're in, what is kind of that cost? Like, we see a benefit up to this point. If you get above that, it's no longer beneficial to us, and now we kind of view the renting.
But if you say that you're in, you're not locked in.
You're
It's
no,
just-
no, you're not locked in.
It's just to start the negotiation.
To kind of, yeah, start the conversation. It's kind of a yes, it'll weed out, cause I do know there's gonna be at least one that they're out regardless. And so you can take that piece of the pie out of the equation, and you can start having the conversation with who's left. And there may be 1 or 2 or even more that drop out after that, but at least starts that conversation, so that way, if it's a big player, you're not counting on that person's dollars when those dollars aren't really there. Now, whether we're in or not, to Rick's point, we certainly could rent. Like I know Carver County dropped out here about 1.5 years ago now, and they actually still use the facility. They just use it as a renter instead of a exclusive member per se. So yeah, they don't get a seat at the table when making decisions. They kind of get what comes to them, basically.
Well, Steve, now, if you went with that idea where we made our own burner, you wouldn't need to go there at all anymore?
We would go there to do some scenario-based stuff, cause if we did Connex boxes, you basically set up a makeshift house in four boxes, right? And you just burn pallets and you can do your burns in there. There's still some benefit to doing standpipe training and stuff out there. Would we go out there twice a year? Probably not. No, maybe once. Maybe twice, I guess, but
But that would be reimbursable.
then that would be reimbursed, so it wouldn't cost anything.
So you might wanna start looking at putting that on our, agenda one of these days, cause I would like to see you guys have that, so you can get the whole department in there. So you don't gotta split it up 15 here, 15 there.
Yeah, we're exploring it. I did talk with Matt and Josh a little bit about it, met with Matt out there to see if there's actually room where we could put something there, and if I could buy 4 boxes and it would fit, and if we could put a fence around it and put some training props, like a door prop and a roof prop and stuff. And it seems like there possibly could be some room out there, but
well, you wouldn't have to use pallets, you use up all that, Matt will cut that wood up for you, then you can put that in there.
some nice dry stuff.
Yeah.
Only oak though.
Alright, so you don't need action on this at all.
So, I mean, I'll need action eventually, and I think the more questions that we can flesh out, the better. I mean, there's certainly things that we can go back and explore. I would like to have a formal action on this by the first meeting in April. That way I can take it back to the board, kind of the thoughts of the council on where New Prague is at. I guess, Sean, you haven't any questions yet? Does anything come to mind yet, or?
No, I was just taking it all in.
I haven't even looked at that place over there in years. I suppose I should take a ride over to Jordan.
Okay. Anything else on that?
Not on this unless you have a question. I'll bring it back for a standing item when we can have a little bit more
Yeah.
discussion at the next meeting too.
Okay. All right, now we're down to miscellaneous. I'll go around the horn. Rick, do you?
Nothing.
Okay, so you talked about, well, let's talk about chicken and agenda and what's going on with that.
Yes, so the current timeline for the chickens, so the way, we would have to to allow chickens in the city of New Prague, we would have to amend the ordinance that, at the current moment does not allow domesticated animals within the city. So an ordinance by state law requires a public hearing at the planning commission, and then it requires 2 readings before the city council, and then 15 days after it's published in the paper, that ordinance takes effect. So to those lines, after the city council asked staff to start looking into it, staff did start doing quite a bit of research, and I'm part of staff. We have placed it on the agenda for planning commission to have a full discussion on it at the March meeting. Now, this is not the public hearing, because we don't have an ordinance in front of us yet to actually look at. And so planning commission is gonna have their discussion on it. We will then bring it to the city council in early April to say, hey, this is kind of what the planning commission's looking at. Is this something that the city council wants to move forward with, or kind of hold it, or just kind of put it dead in its tracks there? If that's something the city council is interested in pursuing, we will get a public hearing scheduled at planning commission in April, and then the ordinance would be read twice, so the 2 meetings in May. And assuming it passes at that point to allow chickens, that would be published as the meeting basically, or the newspaper after the second May meeting, and then I would expect mid-June is when that would take effect. And that's just kind of the process that we have to go through to change ordinances, and to certainly try to get as much public feedback as possible.
So right now, there isn't an ordinance, or there is an ordinance?
The ordinance does not allow for domesticated animals.
Oh, okay, there is.
Yes, there is an ordinance that says you're not allowed to have domesticated animals, chickens, goats. We had someone come in once to ask if they could have a horse on their property. I think that was like my first day on the job. So yeah, we would have to amend that ordinance to allow domesticated animal, or chickens as within the city limits.
Matt's already got sheep.
Well, I don't know about it, no one's complained, so.
Sean, do you got anything?
I have nothing, no.
Maybe? Josh, you have anything else?
I do not have anything else.
Okay, Robin?
I have nothing.
Tim? No. Matt?
Just one thing, we had a resignation in the Parks Department, so I hope to have another new hire by the next city council meeting, which would be the 17th. So more to come on that, but lost another really good employee to another nearby city, so just keep trying to replace them.
Steve? Okay, with that.
I actually did have something come back to me. Gentleman mentioned sidewalks.
Oh,
I would
yes.
assume that during our zoning code update here that we're going throughout the year, that will be another, like chickens, something that's discussed this year, as to what our current sidewalk policy is, and if that continues to work for the city going forward.
Yeah,
we're going.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, we're going through a full zoning kind of update.
Yeah.
So I expect that to be discussed this year.
Okay, with that, I take a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Everybody enjoy your snowfall tomorrow.
No, wait.
Just unplug yours.
Did you get the stud tires on?
Thank you.
I keep telling you.